Today I'm going to be telling you how I am going to be redesigning my garden, and I just want to thank you guys out there for all the comments that you gave. It was absolutely tremendous. The outpouring of creativity and lateral thinking was absolutely awesome and unbelievable. I think I had about 24 different people talking about how I could do this. Some people came back with more ideas, and didn't just give it only once, and I really want to thank you guys. I'm going to be listing you down below in my description, because anybody that's new to this site of mine, please have a look at these guys. They have really helped me, and they are very, very creative people, and I want to just thank them very much. Now, this was my original plan of what my garden was going to look like, and during the removal of the rockery, I found this pond. Now, this is where we started to plan the garden in 3 sections, and this method of planning it in 3 sections is still going to remain the same, and I'm very, very happy with this. So let's just focus on the food forest area, because this is the area that I needed to redesign. And this was the original plan from the top view, and this is where the pond was found. And now we've decided to actually expand the size of the pond, and I'll tell you why later. I know it sounds daft, but I've decided to expand the size. So this is what now is going to be the basis, and this is what I consider now the unmovable sections in my garden. Now let's place the 3 girls, the 3 tree girls, and I've had to sacrifice 1 tree girl from the original plan, but I've kept most of the original path to reduce costs. Now there are little bits of the path that I'm going to be nibbling away at to make space for the tree girls to fit, but I've had to sacrifice 1 of the tree girls, and I've also had to sacrifice 1 of the berry bushes, and this is what the berries bushes are going to be placed in. Now I've decided to include a chicken coop in my first pond area, because this is a very shaded spot, and the fish like shaded spots, but because I've got another pond now, I have to do something with this shaded spot. So I've decided to include chickens, because chickens like a shaded spot, and chickens are very useful birds. They are good for things like composting and catching slugs, which we're all plagued with, and they are also, they also eat things like kitchen scraps, and I'm going to have to learn such a lot more about chickens. It's going to be delightful. It's going to be a really exciting journey, because you can't call chickens lovable, but they are adorable. Anyway, the 3-foot path, wide path, is in a very, very sunny part of the garden, and that's just 4 inches thick. I can't really remove that, so I'm going to be keeping it. But you can see the squares that I put over there, and that's for the pots. Now, originally I didn't want to have any pots, because I wanted a really, really natural garden, but the pots are good for things like squashes and stuff like this. It's beneficial to start them in the greenhouse and then move them out into the garden, into a nice sunny spot. And so I'm going to be using that path and that part of the sunny spots there for the pots. And now this is what my basic layout will look like. Now let's just focus on the pond. I told you I was going to be expanding the pond because I want to grow fish. Now fish is going to be something very exciting for me. I've never kept fish before, and I'm going to have a lot to learn about fish, and I want to grow fish that I can actually eat, so it can benefit to my self-sufficiency. Now, I could also use the fish water as a liquid fertilizer, somewhere like aquaponics, but it'll be distributed via the watering can. So it's a very low-tech aquaponics scheme. And so let's take a look at the fish pond. Now, we will have to have a shallow band going most of the way around the pond for plants that oxygenate the water. Now at the one end it'll have what I call a beach area, and that's for frogs and insects and birds, because if the pond is too high above the water, the birds in that can't really drink, and the frogs can't, once they get into the pond, they can't get out again. And the same thing with insects. So you've got to give them a nice sort of like beach area where the frogs can probably lay their eggs in the shallow areas, because frogs like an area no deeper than about a foot of water, whereas toads, they have it a whole lot deeper. And the fish will control their sort of populations. And at the other end of opposite the beach area, we're going to have a waterfall feature, and that will also help to oxygenate the water, and this will cause a beautiful sort of aesthetic value as well to the garden, and it'll bring a beautiful sound that is very encouraging for birds and other creatures in nature to come to hear the trickling of the water or the bubbling of the brooks, so to speak. So now let's talk about how did I get rid of all that rubble, because what I've done now hasn't got rid of the rubble. It's increased a little, it's decreased the amount that I have to have, but I had a significant pile of rubble that I had to get. Well, the rubble will go around the edge of the pond in the trenches that I've already dug, when I started getting out all the roots and all sorts of stuff that was planted in the rockery. And this is where I'm going to be expanding the pond into these areas, and these areas will cause the shallow ends. And the one shallow end will be also, these areas will also make up the external walls of the pond. So I'll have the beach and everything else all in the shallow areas, and it'll be on top of all this rubble. Now, the waterfall and the finishing areas of around the pond will be done with the good stone that I've kept, and there is plenty of it, and that'll make it look really, really nice. So you won't even see the rubble, because the rubble will be covered with soil and stuff like this, and then the matting of the pond, and then the good stone on top of it. And I think this is going to be really, really beautiful in the end. And this is how the new redesign looks at this moment in my head. So what are my targets for this year? Well, I want my food forest complete. That means I've got to plant my 3 main trees. Now, I've got to plant the trees before I plant anything else, because I want to give them a good start, so that when I plant the berries, they don't overcrowd the trees and they don't strangle them to death. So I've also now got to carry on and dig all the other areas out. I've still got another one little big bush to get out, and that whole big bamboo bit to get out, but I've got to double dig the entire garden, because when I was looking at it just the other day, there was more rubble under the ground. I think when they built the house, or they've done buildings, they've just shoved a whole lot of rubble, and it's all under the ground. So I'm going to be digging to about 2 feet deep to get all this rubble out, because I'm a great believer in having a very, very good soil. I believe that if you get your soil right, anything will grow. I know when I was a youngster, we lived in a forest town where the town was surrounded by forest, and the gardens were absolutely beautiful. You could just pop anything into the ground and it would grow, because it was full of nourishment, and that's what I want for this garden. So I want to make sure that at least 2 foot down, I've got a really, really good soil. I don't mind if it takes me a couple of years to get that soil really rich and a nice loamy and fertile, because that will help me right into my old age and beyond, and whoever takes this house over will have food in abundance. Now, I've also got to remove the concrete pathway where the windy dryer is. That's so I can make space for a tree, because the one tree guild is going in there, and I need that space to be opened. And then I also want to be able to mulch the entire area before the winter, so that it can rot down and start to make the ground fertile. And this meets all my original goal plans, but God willing, I think I might even have saved a little money, because I'm still determined to keep it at less than $5 a week. And now, what are my future targets? Well, the berry bushes and all the other plants, they will be planted next year to start now getting everything in the food forest going. So all my perennials will be going in, and a whole lot of other things will be going into the food forest to start really making it blossom. Now, the chicken coop, I don't know where that fits into the plan, but it's a new idea. I have to budget it out. I have to see if I can get wood for free to start making it. I've already managed to source a bit of chicken mesh, which my daughter, who's training to be an architect and an engineer, they had a project, so they went and scrounged around and they found a whole roll of chicken mesh wire. So they gave me the leftovers, and I think, you know, I don't know if it'll be enough, but it's certainly a great start. And I've already got some pellet woods. So, yeah, I think I might be able to get the chicken coop nearing, you know, a better sort of position. And the fish pond, well, I really don't know, because as I'm double digging my garden for this year, I'm going to be pulling out a lot of stones and stuff like that. And that's going to be up. And it's going to be building up the shallow areas, and that'll dictate really how high my pond has to go, because that's where I'm putting all my old rubble into those areas. So I first have to do all that before I can see where I am in the garden, because with the fish pond, even though there's a very solid one down below, I have to expand it. So I have to get pond liner, but I have to also get some sort of matting over it so that it covers all the sharp areas so it doesn't puncture the liner. And then, of course, then there's a rockery, and there's pumps and filters and all sorts of other stuff that I have to look at where I can source it and how cheaply I can source it. But can I do it for less than $5 a week? Well, definitely I can. And I just want to thank you all again for your wonderful input and ideas. And I can't say any more. I just want to say thank you, and please subscribe, because this is going to be really exciting, and I'm delighted to have you all aboard. Thank you very much, and bye-bye.
Yes! Please subscribe!